Welcome back to the Dirty Work Podcast. Psychedelics.
Yeah,
we're super excited. We've been going hard on this series of psychedelics. It's taken us further into a stranger series than I was expecting, but it's been very interesting, very rewarding, and pretty fun. But I'm very excited for this week because we have none other than our resident scholar, Cassie Garison, in-house with us, speaking to us a little bit of a fun angle on psychedelics this week. We're going to be talking about the Cult of Demeter and the Eleusinian Mystery Cult.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Same thing, but...
Same thing.
Yeah.
She corrects.
Yeah.
So we're very excited to have her, and we're excited to dive in. So just catch us up a little bit, Cassie, if you could. If you could tell us a little bit about your background, both as a producer of scholarly works and just sort of what got you into that, a little bit of your family background, that sort of thing. Just chat for a couple minutes, and if we have questions, we'll ask.
Yeah. So in college, I studied classical languages and literature, and specifically ancient Greek and Latin. And specifically what I was interested in was ancient Greek poetic works, but a lot of ancient Greek poetic works are also about like theological or like cult rituals or those sorts of things, just because it was obviously like a different mode of religion than the organized religion we have now, where a lot of it was focused around cults to the pantheon or other sorts of things. So did that in college. Ever since, I've still been really interested in sort of exploring more, and I found that there are a lot of gaps in a lot of the scholarly research that's done by previous scholars, especially in areas of gender and sexuality, and also like in areas of madness. So sort of things that like question like a lot of things that were previously considered taboo were sort of eroded by a lot of the classical scholars. So kind of what I've been interested in is filling in the blanks of what a lot of people had omitted with translation. So that's kind of the work I like to do. And I also write poetry, so I sort of have a personal connection to like wanting to study the poetry.
Which we will have her website and any other sort of works in the description below, so check it out. It's super cool. Very, very good.
Do you ever write poems in ancient Greek?
I wish. No.
Probably no one could read the
now.
poems. It'd be like kind of writing to yourself.
Yeah. It'd be a very, very small demographic.
Like, damn it, Cassie, you did it again. But like nobody could really. Yeah.
One view.
Okay.
But he loved it.
Give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, you get one thumbs up.
So what led you, like, why are you interested in that?
Yeah.
Just what got you into studying classics at school?
So I think a lot of it had to do with my background. Like I grew up in a practicing Greek Orthodox family, and my family is also Greek American. And so a lot of my childhood sort of revolved around my yaya, who's my grandma, would tell me a lot of stories about mythology and just sort of different, sort of the stories of like Persephone or the story of Arachne, but of course she would make them more suitable for children because a lot of them are really, really inappropriate.
Not a typical grandma story.
Yeah, she would.
My grandma told me stories like that.
I don't know, some are still pretty bad though. You know, if you think like Red Riding Hood or
like
something.
no matter how mellow.
All fairy tales are pretty
Yeah.
You just had Greek names and stuff.
Yeah, when you like break it down to the actual structure, you're like, oh my god, she got kidnapped.
Yeah.
But then your grandma's just like, oh yeah.
Did somebody get eaten, Grandma? I don't know where that's happening here.
Metaphorically.
You're like, is this cannibalism? Yeah, so I, from a young age, sort of had interest in mythology primarily, but it was almost odd because for a while when my yaya was telling me these stories, I kind of thought that she had made them up. And then like years later, I had heard like the story of Arachne somewhere, and I was like, wait, this is like an actual thing.
Instant disdain for your grandma.
Yeah.
You're like, I thought you were brilliant.
You stole these.
I was
You're a
like,
good
I just thought you were
storyteller,
a really
but-
great storyteller.
not a like, writer.
Gave her like the credit of like the entire ancient Greek society.
You're like, my mom has this really cool idea of like this guy named Zeus.
It's like, Mom, you know the pantheon that Grandma made up? She didn't make it up.
It was like plot twist. Grandma was actually Homer.
Whoa.
She was Homer all along.
Mind blown.
Classic.
That's
But so I was always like really connected to that and interested in that from a young age. And so then I had got into college and I went to Franklin and Marshall, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to study. And I had to choose a language, and I chose Latin because I just thought it would be really cool to learn Latin. And so after I took that first Latin class, I had just become really attached to it. So I just started to take more and more classics courses. And there kind of hit a point where I had to choose because there was something in me that felt like I had to do business or something hard. But I was like, what I really love is classics and like language, so I'm gonna do this. And so like I didn't want it to be something that ended after I graduated, so I've sort of been doing a lot of work in trying to continue to produce articles that are both like based in real research and like have strong evidence, but also sort of take like a creative edge and are like accessible to people and like digestible.
That's
so
cool. What are some of the publications you write for?
Yeah, so pretty much the main place, well, for like classical stuff, I have a lot more poems and like a nonfiction piece published than I do classical stuff, just because classical stuff takes such a long time because it's like you have to do translations and then you have to like check your translations and you have to like reference a lot of your sources in original text, so it's just like this multi-phasal process. But currently a place that I am writing for, that's a really cool place, it's called Sententiae Antiquae. And so a professor out of Brandeis University actually runs it, and like the focus of it is sort of, it kind of has a modge-podge of different things. So it has like some translations or even just like couple line translations, like tidbits to sort of get, and it also has like some more scholarly articles. Like it has a wide breadth of stuff, but like the purpose of it is like both like tackling things that are like relevant in the contemporary, whether it relates to like social matters, but also like making classics an accessible field.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's like a really cool place, and I would recommend checking it out
Yeah,
for sure.
we will. Again,
Another plug.
in the description, check it out.
Yeah, but it's a cool place. And after I published my first article with them, which was on gender and sexuality in antiquity, it was a really great experience. Like a lot of people weren't interacting with the work, so I wanted to continue to work with them. They're
absolutely.
super cool. Yeah.
Okay, so born Orthodox turned Greek classics extraordinaire.
Flattered.
Okay, what interested you in the Cult of Demeter?
Yeah.
And break it down. Let's dive in. What are we going to be speaking about? We know a little bit. We know almost nothing. So
That could be more accurate.
you know, that's probably better. In general, but let's dive in. So, what interested you in this to start?
Yeah.
Like, why'd you get into it? And then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I kind of brought two things that I wanted to talk about. And so the first one is like the Cult of Demeter and Eleusinian Mysteries, which I'll explain a little bit about.
Which
Please
is
do.
the same thing.
It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
they-
I will review.
The cult
Not
like,
make that mistake.
Never
performs
forget.
the mysteries in Eleusis. But so that's like more of a historical account, and we have people like Pausanias who I was telling you that he's not really like a historian. Like, well, I guess he is kind of a historian. He's not really like Herodotus or Thucydides, who are like the two main Greek historians. He is more of like, I want to call him like a memoirist.
Is he like the guy who blogs nowadays? Like he would get stuff right,
Yeah, yeah.
but he's
Like,
also
he's kinda
like,
like
well,
a-
it was a dot.
Yeah.
Is that where we get the
blah,
word?
blah.
Is that where we get the term to posit something?
I have no idea.
Let's go with
actually.
that because that would be freaking
Right.
awesome,
Or something,
pretend-
right?
That actually
Yeah,
would
what-
be really cool.
Maybe.
Right? To posit.
I learned that hilarious and hysteria come from the same
Yeah.
root. Yeah, there you go.
It comes from Isteros, which means uterus.
And she's the best. And then also,
Thanks,
Pan.
Freud. Thanks, Freud.
Pan, God,
Yeah,
all. The word panic comes from that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Panic is also like a mythological figure. It's Panic and I
Oh,
don't remember.
because I saw Hercules,
Okay.
Yeah.
right?
There you go.
Yeah, that's what
So,
I'm
like,
citing.
correct me if I'm wrong
Okay,
here real
yeah.
quick, Cassie, but panic is like if you were venturing off into the forest and you sort of get this feeling that something's up. I heard that's where it comes from because you're sort of venturing into like the dining table of Pan he's about to feast.
Yeah.
You know
like
what I mean?
it's like frenzied and it's
Okay.
like a little like yeah.
That's what they were
I'm
saying.
gonna use that word a lot today, I think.
I like
frenzied.
that.
Frenzy.
It's a good
Fun
word.
already, man.
Today's episode is brought to you by the word frenzy.
That's your sponsor.
Thanks,
Yeah,
thanks
thank
for
you, Frenzy.
sponsoring us. We're sponsored by Words currently.
Yeah.
They don't pay well, but
Or at all.
or at any.
but it sounds cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much like on one side we have like the Eleusinian Mysteries, which ancient Greek blogger / travel writer, memoirist Pausanias, and pretty much like why I say that is kind of, I mean a lot of histories were kind of like this where the writer is like, I heard from this person this, and then we'll just write that down and it's historical. So I guess there's really not a lot of difference between historical accounts and like literature accounts in the long run because they're all kind of just very convoluted in a lot of ways. But then the second instance that I kind of wanted to weave together with that was about the Euripides play Bacchae. And so like the reason why I was weaving these two together is pretty much there's not a lot of information about in the Eleusinian Mysteries like what had gone on like within the cult, because obviously it's not like public material. Like cults don't really tell a lot of people what they're doing.
Defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
They don't even tell the people in the cult sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not as cool.
It's
They
all-
tell, you know?
It's also called the Eleusinian Mysteries, so like if it didn't have like a little bit of mystery.
Yeah, if you knew what all happened, we wouldn't have a podcast on it probably.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not cool. Like, oh, that's what you did? Yeah,
It
okay,
would be
cool.
like,
I'll go to the one where I don't know what they're doing.
The mystery is, why did you tell everyone the mystery? Basically.
It's actually like they worked hard to keep it mysterious. But and the other side is the Bacchae, and like one reason why I wanted to talk about them together is because obviously like the account of the Bacchae, which is like not Thucydides, Euripides, like a play, it's obviously much more detailed because it's creatively constructed and like preserved pretty well. So like kind of how I wanted to view them was I wanted to view them as like part of a larger paradigm about like how psychedelics / alcohol / madness and like frenzied states are used to uphold religion or like the pantheon, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to be careful with the word religion because I feel like it's so amorphous in a lot of ways. But
You don't
It
have to be
is.
careful for us.
yeah.
You can just say whatever. You
Oh, we
want.
don't
Yeah.
care at all. But yes, for the sake of clarity,
Yeah.
religion is a very like
You don't really know.
wide
Yeah.
sweeping term, which
Yeah.
can be kind of difficult to
It's
pin
like
down.
a giant bubble.
People who
Exactly.
believe the same thing either hate the word or love it. You know what I mean? But they're like
Yeah.
the same.
There's like a move within like Protestant theology where it's like
Not a
religion is kind of a curse word. It's like
Yeah.
we're getting away from religion.
It's relationship.
It's relationship.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's-
It's the big thing. Like, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. That's
That
like what.
feels
we're
like
getting
we're,
back to
like,
the simple
in a
gospel.
futuristic society, and it's like a euphemism.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what it is.
It's two Jesus is my boyfriend.
it
Yeah.
is.
This is my boyfriend, and I go,
You see, like, ballroom
I
dancing with
heard
him.
Jesus wristband.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
that's tough. That's tough.
That's another
Another
episode.
It's tough
episode.
having an IQ above 100. Just kidding.
It's good being elitist, though. I like that. I like that.
Exactly. It's good being an elitist. Sorry, continue.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, so I wanted to use that. Not implying that exactly what happened was the same, but I just wanted to use them as like two parts of like a larger paradigm.
Yeah.
Because I think they do have a lot of parallels, and I think that, like, I'm not saying in any way that Bacchae was based off of the Eleusinian Mysteries. Like, I don't think that's true at all, but I think that they are two parts of a larger paradigm.
Okay.
And I think that they have a lot of parallels. So I guess I should talk about them now.
I mean, yeah.
I should
let's
say
go.
what they actually
Let's
are.
do
Just
it.
dive right in so
Yeah.
that people aren't confused.
I was trying to keep it mysterious for like as long as I
I like
can.
that.
That worked.
So-
We should just end it now.
You just need to ask people to sign up for this cult.
Yeah,
that
part
we're
2 is a
starting.
paywall, is when
Yeah.
Cassie speaks about what it
If
actually
you want to
is.
actually know anything, pay. Subscribe.
Yeah, so pretty much, I guess, first, the Eleusinian Mysteries. So the Eleusinian Mysteries is a sort of ritual that took place twice a year in Eleusis, which is, I think it's south of Athens. I don't know. It's still a place, actually, and I've been to the cult site. Yeah, but pretty much they think that this site was where Persephone was pulled into the ground by Hades. And like for those who don't know the story, like brief overview is Persephone was pretty much kidnapped. Persephone, who is the daughter of Demeter, was kidnapped by Hades. And so then they had sort of worked out this deal that for half the year while Persephone was in the underworld, it would be like winter and cold, whatever. And then for the other half, when she was back with her mother. So it was like a shared custody thing, but with like her mother and Hades, who was like trying to marry. Well, they did get married, but I don't think Persephone was ever like...
That's how we got our seasons.
Yeah, she was never... Yeah, exactly. It's like the season story, but she was pretty much kidnapped and dragged into the underworld.
Okay.
But they
honeymoon.
have this like giant hole at the site of Eleusis, and pretty much it's where they think Persephone was dragged into. And so also like when they were having, like I said, they don't really know a lot of what happened during this ritual other than like the archaeological evidence that they found, which is a lot of like, they have a lot of like cult statues. Like they have this massive statue of Demeter.
You tell me that's the one that's like 60 feet tall?
Yeah, it's like this like unbelievably huge statue. They didn't find all of it, I think. Usually like the arms fall off. Hence, yeah, typical.
The head will always be
in
like
typical
15 feet away.
fashion, yeah.
Nose, penis, arms. Those are the things that fall off
Yeah.
of ancient statues.
Yeah.
It's true.
And just human bodies.
Yeah, just the whole body.
Okay.
Yeah, and so pretty much, I guess the psychedelic tie of this story is that during the ritual, there was evidence that, and actually, like, classicists have been shifting back and forth. Like, every 10 years, they're like, no, they didn't do this. And then, like, 10 years later, they're like, no, they did do this. But in 2002, a New York Times article had come out that had kind of affirmed that, like, oracles were like having psychedelic experiences.
It all makes sense.
Yeah, because like the like ethanol something coming from the ground, like two chemicals were coming from the ground and like making them mad essentially. But yeah, so right now they're in the mode of like, yeah, this happened. And so Kaikion was this tincture that was made of, I wrote it down because I thought I wouldn't remember. It's barley, and like, it's a barley-based beverage with psychoactive properties. And so pretty much what would happen is like all of those in the cult would drink this beverage, and it would pretty much like intoxicate them. And so a lot of people had reported like seeing like this odd moment where like Persephone, like I said, it's twice per year, so like it's at the turn of the seasons. Those have a name, solstices. I was like, I know someone's named this. So like they were kind of having this like collective hallucination, and a lot of them were kind of like, I think I just saw like Persephone get dragged into the earth.
Now, is that like, do you think like a mass hysteria type thing? Of like they're saying they see the same thing? Or
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with like power of suggestion for sure. Like if you're, I mean, and even if they're not seeing the same thing, like I think that if a bunch of them were seeing the same thing, like those who weren't seeing it, like probably wouldn't admit it. Like if you're in, even if you're in a church today and everyone's like feeling like they're having this holy experience,
like charismatic people when they're speaking in tongues or something.
It's the equivalent of us, of people, Protestants raising their hands.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they raise their hands in worship. I have to do that as well.
Yeah, like no one's gonna agree.
That's exactly
that
what it is.
No one's gonna be like, yeah, I'm the only person here not having this experience. You know, like it's this weird like group psychology.
It's a peer pressure type thing almost, right? Like you're even if they're not doing it directly to you, you just feel like you want to.
It's not peer pressure. It's your turn.
And we definitely underestimate the power of the unconscious and the subconscious to like really like express itself when your brain is like not necessarily working the way it's supposed to, and you have all these new thought patterns that are being like.
You're so much more susceptible.
Oh yeah. It's reforming all these thought patterns, and it's kind of like marrying in some distorted way with your unconscious.
Cassie, can you break down real quick what, if you could, like what is the significance of an oracle in like a Greek cult or religion or something?
That was my sidetrack from what that was, but I do want to talk about the oracle because the oracle's super, super cool. So pretty much like the oracle or Pythia, as they were sometimes called, were usually women, and they were people who like were put in so there's like the Oracle of Delphi, and there's pretty much oracles in like every major city. I think there's 5 major oracles though that people like travel to go to, and so they're thought to be sort of like a conduit for communication with the gods.
Yeah.
And in most cases, like I know it's either a specific god, like in Delphi, it's Apollo, it's the Oracle of Apollo. And in other cases, they think it's like a chthonic conduit, so like from the underworld type thing. Yeah, which I guess is a little creepier.
Those were the outcast ones.
Yeah,
the chthonic stuff.
They were like the goth oracle.
Yeah.
You go at night.
But
Mom and Dad, you don't understand.
All the good oracles were chosen. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I get the one.
So
that's
all I had
on.
this. Virgins, or did you have sex with them, or was the sexual relationship not on the table?
I'm pretty sure they were mostly virgins.
Okay.
I'm not completely sure, but I know they also had like Vestal virgins, which were like priestesses of Apollo, and like that was their purpose.
They were like picked to
Yeah.
be a virgin forever.
They
Thanks.
were.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, they like got sold into virginity.
Yeah, I saw that in wherever we were. In the Roman Forum.
Yeah.
In Italy. Yeah, it's like that. These like temple where they would just like send all these women. It's like, it's a great blessing.
Could I roll again?
You don't have a sex drive anyway.
Chastity.
So
But then they were all like this 40 chicks just in this building, just never be able to have sex, and they
Just
probably
hanging.
were turning into like a little
Spin again.
lesbian. Yeah, it was awful. Felt bad.
Sounds like a fun time.
I was gonna say it might have been actually more fun. I don't know.
Depends on who you are, I guess. You know?
That was honestly what they did. They're like, okay, you're a lesbian, so we're just gonna like give this to you, and like
Yeah, we'll just put you in that room and we'll pretend you're good.
Yeah, we'll pretend it's like for Apollo, but you guys just do your thing.
It's for you.
Yeah, basically the priesthood and Catholic.
Yeah.
The Lavender Mafia.
Too
Right?
far. The Lavender Mafia.
That's a different episode as well.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
Oh, you're
My bad.
I don't know. I like that side tangent. I'm interested. That's a good theory. I think we should propose that.
Oh,
theory.
it's definitely a very good theory.
You're like, all right, lesbianism and oracles.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like
It
the
works.
nuns, like a lot of nuns and stuff like that. It makes sense. So you're like sexually deprived,
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
living with a bunch of people who you're like extremely emotionally and spiritually connected
Yeah.
to. You're just asking for
Yeah.
something to happen.
Yeah, like there has to be like some form of like sexual outlet. I feel
100%.
like. But anyway.
You see it in prison. You see it in, like I said. Sorry, continue.
Uh,
We'll have a whole
Where?
podcast on
Do you
that.
want to have an episode on something?
that's like
you
your
have
next
something to look
4-part
at.
series.
We'll be calling you again.
We'll
I
have
guess.
her
You'll be
back.
coming back.
She's gonna be the fourth.
Oracles
horseman.
of Sex. That would be what it's called, though.
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's edgy, too.
Yeah, so pretty much with the
But they're not
oracle,
turned off yet.
Yeah, the holy lesbians.
I'm into it.
Okay, so the oracles.
Yeah, so pretty much with the oracle, like a lot of them were also in these like sort of underground, like I don't really know what to call it, like area, and so a lot of them, like for instance, the Oracle of Delphi, it was like on the side of a mountain, and so they had found evidence that like these fumes were leaking, which were pretty much like making the oracles. Like first it causes like a highness, but if you have more exposure, like it causes you to like have it's like psychoactive, like it causes you to like hallucinate, like to just be like frenzied, just to kind of like lose it in a lot of ways.
And we don't know what the fumes were, right?
What?
That
Oh.
were kind of leaking, or
Actually,
there's ideas.
I wrote this down too because this is like a very sciencey thing, and I'm really bad at science stuff. Okay. I actually looked it up today because I was curious, but like exactly what it is. But it says it's also sidetrack is that when I was reading this article, I realized that even though this has been like a debate that's been happening between classicists for hundreds of years, this article was like the first time that someone actually called like a geologist to be like, can you actually like
Really?
look at this, because we don't really know what this is.
So
like,
interesting.
We're just like fighting about it. But,
Classic.
but it's ethylene, which is a sweet smelling gas once used as an anesthetic. And it says in its first stages it produces disembodied euphoria, an altered mental status, and a pleasant sensation. And then it says like with prolonged exposure, like you are hallucinating.
What I always wonder about that, like, did they just happen upon this like edge of a mountain and then just stay there for a while and get high and then be like, well, this is the place where we're
Yeah.
channeling the gods? You know what I mean? Is it like that much of a coincidence?
I have
they
no
probably
idea. Yeah, because it's
You know,
curious
probably.
how it happened at so many places. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of have no idea either. I don't think anyone like really has like how that process worked. Like, did it start like that, or they just like
Don't
found
find
it?
that nowadays.
One person went on a mountain to pray and was like tripping.
Oh yeah, they're
balls,
like,
and then said,
then they're
"I'm
like,
coming
this
back."
is the holy
Guys,
spot.
Yeah, I mean,
you
you
need to go
could
up
see,
there. That's
Best
where
prayer
God
of
is.
my life.
Yeah.
Best prayer ever. You, gotta
you
come
could
with me.
see how it happens, like
Yeah.
kind of naturally if you think about it that way.
That's why gods are at the top of the mountains, because the oxygen's thin
Yeah.
and all the shrooms grow.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you go and you have like a holy experience, and they're like, instead of being like, well, like this gas in the ground, like
Yeah.
they're like, I just.
And it's beautiful up there, possibly. You know what I mean?
Oh
You're
yeah,
looking
and
out
you're
at
closer
everything.
to God in the sense that you believe that God is
Yeah.
up high. You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Yeah, it's super, super wild. But like pretty much that's what they thought had caused. Like there's a lot of reports of like oracles like speaking in tongues or like foaming at the mouth or like having these like very like
Sounds like Sunday.
yeah like someone's like
It's every
someone's
Sunday
like,
for me.
super super fucked up and like talking, and people were kind of like classicists were kind of like were oracles like faking it, like what was happening, but it was like they're really just fucked up.
So real quick, if I can ask,
Yeah.
because for the listener now, they know that at 30 minutes we kind of cut off and we start again.
True.
We got about 5 minutes before that happens.
Yeah.
We can always carry it over to the next phase. But and maybe you said it and I missed it. The reason the ritual is going on.
Yeah.
Obviously, you talked about Persephone
Yeah.
was kidnapped,
Yeah.
and
Allegedly.
allegedly,
So we've heard.
allegedly.
Okay.
According to her
Innocent until
grandma.
proven guilty.
And there was a deal made with Hades and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So why did the rituals begin? Was it more just like a thing that just happened in like a remembrance type thing, or was it like part of the like they tried to bring her back, or
I think like what it was part of was it was sort of like an honoring of like her coming up and then like her going back down,
yeah.
like causing like the drastic shift of seasons.
okay?
And also like a lot of it was about Demeter. I'm not exactly, like I said, there's like not a whole bunch of information about like their beliefs or like what was happening on the inside. But yeah, like it was a lot about like the seasons and about
Yeah.
I don't know, like this weird juxtaposition between like this act of like mourning, like losing and then like coming back, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So, Bacchae? Getting that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that in sort of like your thought process behind that play and how it works in with this Cult of Demeter we're talking about?
Yeah, so the reason why I'm kind of studying this play and this more historical log-esque account together is because I kind of like to think of the play Bacchae by Euripides as sort of like a layover of like the skeleton that is provided by the Eleusinian Mysteries. And so pretty much what's happening in Euripides' Bacchae, it's to kind of crunch a lot of really dense material into like a couple minutes. So
Have fun.
That's always a fun
all right.
venture.
Challenge accepted.
Go.
Yeah. So there's the city of Thebes, and Pentheus is the king. Agave is his mother, and so Bacchus, also known as Dionysus, who's like the god of wine, revelry, like partying, pretty much, like comes to Thebes and like wants to be recognized as a god. But Pentheus, who's like kind of young and like a little bit foolish, or he's framed as being so, but also like is very commonly framed as like the play is kind of framed as like a tension between the rational and irrational, like the sensual and the more like stable, the like rational, the sensual and rational.
The head and the heart.
Yeah,
Chaos
the head and
and
the
order.
heart. So pretty much like Bacchus wants to be recognized and Pentheus like refuses to recognize him. So Bacchus possesses a lot of women in the city, including Agave, Pentheus's mother. And so they're all like on this mountain / like in these woods, like kind of partying it up and like consuming like drugs and alcohol. And they're also like possessed by Bacchus. Like they're possessed by the god himself. So they're described as being in this like frenzied and like mad state. So then Bacchus comes to Pentheus because he's like very angry that the king doesn't want to recognize him, obviously. And he is like he wants to sort of exact justice. And so what happens is Bacchus goes to Pentheus disguised as an oracle of Bacchus, or not as like a priest of Bacchus. which I guess is a little vain to like disguise yourself as like a priest of yourself, but so
Not too imaginative.
yeah, so he goes to Pentheus, and he knows Pentheus is like kind of curious, so he convinces Pentheus. He's like, I can take you to see like what you need to see, like I can take you to see like what these women are doing, and Pentheus is like, okay, like I'm kind of in, but like I'm nervous, and so Bacchus is like, I need you to dress like as one of them. So he dresses like as a woman pretty much, and he has like the thyrsus, which is like the like stick kind of, and like he's dressed as like a priest of Bacchus pretty much. And so Bacchus in disguise takes him up to the mountain, and of course all the women are in a frenzied state, and they're kind of having also this like kind of group hallucination, which is what we talked about before. And they see him like not as himself, but they see him as a lion, like a wild lion. So they like grab him and pretty much tear him apart, and his mother like tears his head off, and they like tear his arms and legs off. And so they're all like in this frenzied mad state, and his mother, Agave, has his head and goes down the mountain to her father, who is an old king, Cadmus, and is like, look what I've done through the like power of Bacchus, like I killed this lion, this wild lion with my own hands. And of course he sees that it's her son, and he's like pretty much telling her, he's like, snap out of it, like you're insane, like you're mad, you're frenzied. And so he gets her to, it's described as like, he gets her to like reconnect with sanity, I guess, and realize what she's done, and that she's done that to her son. But also like kind of a big trope in the play is like, at a lot of points you don't really know who's sane, is you don't know if like Pentheus is like being absurd, or like if it's the followers of
like
Bacchus.
Shutter Island kind of vibe.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of a more descript play situation that I was a little bit conflating, but of course it's difficult to exactly lay something onto something else.
I
was going to lead into a question off this
yeah,
idea.
I mean, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, so as people who believe in a God and believe in the spiritual, this definitely presents a question. A question kind of does the presence of psychedelics or the possibility of religious experience related to the use of psychedelics, in your opinion, to some extent, like negate or injure the possibility of true spiritual experience? Or do you believe that it is almost, in a way, a proof of the fact that the spiritual exists? Because we have these pathways. Why do our brains have a spiritual pathway if there is no spiritual reality? And like, what are your thoughts kind of in that whole area, and what this means in terms of an objective spirituality?
So I think actually recently my thoughts on that have changed a little bit, because as I told you guys, like I've been reading a lot of Foucault for some reason. Found some books on sale.
For some reason.
Yeah, now I'm diving in.
Yes.
But pretty much like, and I think a lot of his ideas are really sticking with me, like about religion, about death, about like experience and like sensing. And I think something that he had said that I am using in my paper and that I really like is that madness, or like altered states of consciousness, opposed to being distorted reality, are tapping into some deeper reality. So like something that's already there, really. And I think it's like, it's obviously very, very complicated, because there's so much we like don't understand about reality / death / so many other things. So I don't know. And also like kind of where I sit is like, I know there's this idea that like no one has the same reality, and like no one can understand someone else's reality or consciousness. But I kind of like to think that it's maybe an all or nothing thing. Like either all of our realities are true, or like all of our realities are false, you know?
Ooh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You could put that on
our wall.
True.
It'll be behind us
Fancy
next
fun.
podcast. If you support us.
Somebody like, oh yeah, okay, yeah.
That'll be like, you could have a podcast store and sell really.
Oh, I think in relation to that, I think it's a danger sometimes as civilized people in today's culture. We almost superiorize ourselves when we look at the past, and we say, oh, like those were primitive.
Yeah.
savage people who believe. But these were some of the greatest minds that, I mean, our philosophy and our current thought structures are based on a lot of the works of people who lived 600 BC or even later. When you look at Plato and people who we have drawn so much wisdom from, and to basically play this off as, oh, they were too dumb, or they were these dumb people who believed in a god, I think is a bad way to look at history.
Well, I think it's also like so much of religion at the core are like ritual practices, and like ritual practices is like a physical manifestation of belief is irrational. Like a lot of what we do, or I don't necessarily know that a lot of, actually, I kind of think that a lot of what we do even today with religion might be kind of irrational, or like in the area that it's like functionless, you know? And I think there's like the binary of like good and functional and holy like are equated, and bad and dysfunctional / useless in a lot of ways, and like unholy are kind of conflated. I don't know. I think it's so complex. There's like so many things.
Would you say then that true religious experience is irrational or supra-rational? Like, do you think it's just like above reason? And that, I know that's like maybe if that's like mystical, or like you have to enter into an unknowing. I think we've spoken about this on the podcast before, or because maybe that like it can sound like semantics.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, but it might be different.
I honestly don't know, but I like the idea that it's. I don't know, because I think that still implies a binary system, that you're either ascending or you're transcending. Like it's either supernatural, or what was the other option? Supernatural or primitive? Wait, what was that other option? Yeah.
You said irrational or supra-rational?
Yeah,
I think.
Like irrational or super-rational. Like we still have this binary system that we like keep constructing, and like I don't know how much like religion necessarily does abide by this binary system, even though like we have this idea of like it's either transcending or descending, like, and even so many religions like reflect that in so many of their pillars, like the idea of like heaven and hell, like just
the yin and the yang, and like there's like, life is all in a balance.
It's like balance, but like it's like, is it actually? I don't know.
I would say it's the most, in my opinion, it would be almost the most real thing that humans experience is the reality of suffering and the reality of happiness and joy. And if you were to ask someone like, what do you believe is real or what is true? Almost every single person can at least tell you that they have truly suffered at some point, and that they have truly felt happiness at some point.
That's the thing about the playback guy too, is it's questioning that. It's questioning like, okay, there's so many moments where it poses like you're not sure if Pentheus is the one who is rational or if Agave is, like, for buying into the god. And like there's so many moments it's like, is the sensational rational, or is the like, I guess rational, like what like which aspect of it, and like maybe they're both extremes, but then that would imply that like the neutral or like the middle ground is reality. Like it's a mediation of the two, like of the supernatural and irrational.
It's funny when it's interesting though when you're mentioning heaven and hell, because we speak like and the way we speak too is geographical. Up, God is up, Satan, evil, down, right?
Good, bad, yes.
But almost like something that we've been exploring a little bit is the idea of, and as three Christians, of experiencing the kingdom of heaven as it's the same thing as hell, because it is in full communion. I don't, lack of a better word here, like I'm going to stumble out of bounds here of my the use of language, but of God. But what we need to do is conform our, I don't want to use the word consciousness because it sounds kind of new agey, it's not what I'm going for, but our view of reality to that which is ultimate reality, which is God. So we can, if we haven't formed habits that are the most beneficial to our ultimate perfection, in the age to come, we will experience God then as torment, or we will experience him as eternal paradise.
Yeah, like it's two sides.
But it's not necessarily I'm going up and you are going down, or you're going up and I'm going down, right? It is, God is all in all, and so I get to choose in this life and in the next to some extent possibly how I experience him. And so I think is in human language, we have to build structures which allow us to speak geographically, just like how we do. Like when we say the sun rises and sets, so it doesn't really, you know what I mean? But we have to say, unless you're a flat earther, then it does. Flat Earth Society is our sponsor.
Shout out to the
we'll
Flat
take
Earth
it.
Society.
We speak that way just because it's natural, I guess, and maybe there's something to it, and it's poetic, I guess.
But then it also asks, like, the question of, like, what is natural? And, like, is natural, like, God or like divinity, or is natural like lack thereof? Like,
like is natural human, and then something supernatural is divine, or is the natural divine?
Like C.S. Lewis put it, this is like the world that we have now is just a shadow of the real world. And he considered
because
the real
that's
world,
like it's the cave allegory.
He considered the real world to be spiritual,
and
everything that was physical and natural was just a representation of what was real.
And one of the best arguments for that is the fact that every single person feels that at the core of their existence. Like, if this was the world we were created for, or not created at all, if that we spawned ourselves into, that we were evolved ourselves into, there is that question of like, well, why does every single person feel like there's a meaning which transcends us or transcends this?
The only difference between us and Plato's allegory of the cave, we like the human, we like the body, you know? And like physical stuff. But that's the, I mean, because I think from our perspective of Christianity, I want to say deification, divinity is the most natural. Like perfection, and I'm going to use that word, and I'm not going to define it because you could take that the wrong way. But like divinity is my destiny, what I'm supposed to be, and then anything that feels too human, for lack of a better term. Well, I would say this: the true human is Christ, who is divine. Like if I am to be a true human, I am to be divine.
Yeah.
You know.
I think. Yeah.
At least, and here's one way I think about it too. I almost go, what's like more of a beautiful story? I like how that one
You're
sounds.
like, I like this one.
You know? And
like, why is beauty so attractive to humanity?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
is
it possible because it is, like, beauty is almost more real than...
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about also, like, how does that function in a polytheistic society? Like, how does that function in ancient society when we have, like, a pantheon? Because that's, and, like, in no way are, like, the gods and goddesses, like, depicted as perfect or depicted as ideal. Like, they're not. They're, like, mischievous. Some of them are, like, cruel. Some of them are just, like, kind of weird. Like,
they often commit acts which are much more, like, sinister than people would commit.
Yeah.
It's almost like divine corruption that is almost like escalated.
Like they're kind of just people like fucking around. Like they're people doing.
It's if you gave random guy down the street like the power to like move mountains, what he would do.
Jeez. You know
what I mean? A divine magnifying glass, and you're
Let's give the kid that was bullied a little too much. Way too much power.
It's like the Bruce Almighty story. He's got to do a bunch of weird stuff. You know, he's kind of making traffic move eventually,
and then he'll figure his way.
Blowing a girl's skirt off.
Yeah. And then he gets to the point, but it's
I mean, and that's the thing too. Like even these gods, and I think that these gods were like obviously like the Christian concept, like shaped in the image of like humanity. Mm-hmm. But then like if we like kind of continue to going back, like in a lot of ways. But the thing is like the pantheon of gods was shaped in the image of humanity that I believe is more natural and more rational than we depict Jesus, because it's like it was kind of true to like the flaws. Like it was true that there's like good, bad, weird, mischievous, and like it was very true to like the way the human spirit is, and like not this like lofty ideal that we've entirely stripped the downward side of the binary and only now have the good side of the binary, you know?
Well, it makes sense to describe emotions or these kind of things like anger, for example. By every sense of the imagination, it is a god in the sense that it is completely eternal. It has impacted and touched and possessed every single person who's ever walked the earth.
Well,
and it will be here long after we die. And so these character traits, such as a lot of the gods are represented as, like as Eros or something, a god of love. It's like, well, love is a god. By every like rational standpoint.
No matter where you are. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think the Judeo-Christian idea is that while there are a lot of competing gods, such as the passions and the mind and all that, there is a actual God or reality which has brought all of these into existence. And that's why he says he's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is God of all gods. He is the author by which anger and greed and lust and joy have all found their origin. which obviously is much more idealizing. It's like it's something to aspire to.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of unusual too, because then I think it also like begs you to ask the question of like, how did we, like, it's a social construction. Like, we decided that these certain traits were good, and we decided that these traits were ideal, so we prescribed them onto like the godhead figure. Like we decided that these things were good and these things were bad.
It's almost interesting because I think that kind of takes us back to our series on ethics. I think because like ultimately, right, wouldn't that be the most logical conclusion, void of a active belief in eternal God, right? Because then wouldn't everything then be a social construct? Now, even the belief in an active, living, eternal divine being, there are still things that are social constructs. You know what I mean? But like but not everything would be then, correct? But whereas if you didn't have that, then everything is that correct or not necessarily?
Can you repeat that? Sorry, the second part of it.
Oh, well, I just think like, so if you believe in God, let's just say that, then like then morality isn't a social construct because there's a ground of being, right? But if you don't, then morality would be a social construct? Like, wouldn't it then just be like what's most prosperous to a society?
I think that, like, no. But I think even what's like, I think no matter what, like, we can't really escape, like, the constructions that we've built. And I don't know, like, the way I like to think of it, too, is, like every society has, like, a different understanding of, like, gender and, like, different terms of gender. Like, every society has, like, a different understanding of, like, what is moral and what is immoral. And, like, ultimately that also links to what is legal and what is illegal, what is in creed, what is not in creed type thing. And, like, I don't know. I think for me, like, I struggle because I don't find a lot of consistency. And I think that also, like, in my personal life, I have found that, like, I disagree with a lot of the things that I grew up with. And, like, because of my religion was taught is, like, good or bad. But then I kind of was faced with this unusual situation because, like, I was so deeply entrenched with that. But then also, like, when I left that, there were a lot of other, like, I have a, like, very Christian friend who went to, like, a very liberal church. And so, like, a lot of the things that my church had very, like, very much declared good or bad or sinful or not sinful, her church hadn't. So it's like there's so much inconsistency that I think it's hard to even, like, say, like, what is moral or what is immoral, because there are so many things, like, even, like, contaminating the body in the way of, like, psychedelics or alcohol is, like, immoral in a lot of places. But
sorry, Dad.
Sorry.
We effed up.
Yeah, but then in other places,
our dad's fine with it.
Yeah.
In other places, like, even today in different societies, it's, like, used as a conduit to ascend and, like, to connect with the supernatural. But then in other places it's completely forbidden and thought is, like, you're altering, it's evil, like, you're altering your consciousness. And, like, but then it asks, like, so, like, in the situation where, like, they're altering their consciousness to connect with the divine, and that's part of the ritual, that's the natural. But then in the moment where, like, in the religion where you're not allowed to, it's because you're already in the natural, and that
you're
would make you
adjuncting
unnatural.
Yeah, like with the ayahuasca ceremonies and stuff, with the shamans and stuff, it's like their entire religious experience is predicated on the use of psychedelics.
Yeah, and they're tapping into, like,
and if you don't use it, you're depriving yourself of something necessary. Well, whereas we would view it as an adjunct to something that's already given.
Yeah, and something we talked about so far in this series is the idea of psychedelics getting you to a place that, like, using them wouldn't be getting you to somewhere that is unnatural or somewhere that you shouldn't be. It's that it's getting you to somewhere that you shouldn't be yet, possibly, or getting you in a correct manner where you couldn't be aware of your faculties as well. Like, you could enter the divine realm without them, but maybe them plunging you in there, you might not be ready, and you just don't know how to navigate well.
I think
which is an interesting idea.
Also, we have to ask the question of, like, does that implicate, like, death in a lot of ways? Because I think something that I was a little stuck on was also the way that death has been described in, like, a lot of philosophical texts is, like, death is not, like, a taking away, but it's, like, you're adding to your consciousness, like, you're expanding, you're escalating, like, in a lot of ways, so you're not losing, you're just, like, continuing to gain. And whether that's, like,
a circle of life or
experience.
something, like you're then participating in a way, you're almost participating in a way which you couldn't participate before.
Yeah.
It's a real
But
comforting
also, like,
way of thinking of it.
can't even comprehend being able to participate. And I think, like, that asks the question of, like, are psychedelic experiences, like, similar, where, like, you're gaining this sight, you're gaining this, like, level of consciousness that you could have not without.
Yeah.
And I was saying, like, you see through even biblical texts, you see the command to meditate, the command to fast, the command to participate in activities which, by every neurochemical standpoint, does very similar things to psychedelics. Like,
well, it's like
you can
nirvana,
reach a psychedelic.
like the idea of nirvana,
Yeah, and there's a reason that the monks who will spend hours meditating will reach heightened sensitive awareness because through fasting, such as like with Ramadan or whether in any type of fasting or through meditation, you will, like the serotonin and like the same chemicals which impact psychedelics will actually double sometimes in your mind. And so it kind of makes sense. The question is, even from a religious standpoint, like a Christian standpoint, if God commands meditation as an adjunct to spirituality or as fasting, and you see Jesus be tempted by the devil on the 40th day of his fast, which makes sense because it's like that was when like his brain was like he was at his weakest psychological state.
He was vulnerable. He was
But obviously the Christian text still says that's still a spiritual experience. And the question is almost, do we have a lot of rational faculties which have built barricades between us and the spiritual?
Well,
and the true spiritual ascension is to some extent laying bare those boundaries.
And it is the post-enlightenment split, right, where we think of the difference between natural and supernatural. Right? Because if you're thinking of if you're thinking of like St. Paul, right? Like he's adamant about the resurrection of the body. He's, there's whole epistles against Gnosticism. So at least if it's kept correctly, the tradition of Christianity is an honoring of the body and not a division between spirit and body. Everything is spiritual in a sense. If I'm eating, if I'm talking like this, there's something better, something fun going on here that's, I think, a little bit more than just having
Well, that's why you talk with
your
hands. Like that's the same reason that your body engages in what you do. And like, you can only do so much from like a conversation. Like at some point in a relationship, you need to hug that person. You know what I mean? There has to be a perfect union between the spirit and the relationship and the actual body.
Yeah. I think also like going back a little bit, like what you're saying about like reality, like also like kind of going back to the fact that like everyone has very, very different realities, but also like something that I've been thinking about a little bit, specifically like dealing with the topic of madness, is like where do people with like psychotic disorders like schizophrenia fit in? Because they're like they're like,
this guy's familiar.
This guy has
I have schizophrenia. No, I'm kidding. I work at a psych unit.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like it's like a lot of times like people with schizophrenia were like given exorcisms because they were thought that they were possessed, or like they were like there were people who were thought to be prophets but were having like a psychotic episode. Like that's the thing, like that is their reality and like that's their norm without the intervention of medication in a lot of ways. So I don't know, I think that's really like a complicated part to factor into. And I think that in other times like people with schizophrenia and other sorts of like psychotic and delusional disorders were thought of as like already having that connection.
Epilepsy.
Yeah, like they were thought of as already having that connection with the divine and like already having that ability to like see further and like be a conduit without any sort of like interference. But at the same time, like that also kind of fucked them over because they were like given possessions or exorcisms. Exorcisms.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It almost comes down, we spoke of this a little bit before, but there's this verse at the trial of Christ where Pontius Pilate asks Christ, what is truth?
Yeah.
And you could read it almost as like kind of shrugging him off because he's not speaking to him, like, oh, well, what is truth, right? Or you go, it's a legitimate inquiry from a man steeped in his culture of going, I would legitimately like to know what is truth. And that's the question that we all ask with this sort of thing, because you go, legitimately, what is it? And how do I find it?
Yeah.
Well, how do I ground myself? And do I need to ground myself? And like, is it just our reality is the way we perceive it?
And like, what does it even mean to ground
What does it mean?
yourself?
And that's the question.
What's the base?
And the religious idea is that there is a reality, and heaven would be predicated on the level in which you assimilate with true reality, and hell would be that rejection of it. And you see, like even the Orthodox kind of idea of hell, this idea that there is it's still love being poured out on you, but it's your perception of that love. Either if you show love to a person who loves you back, it's a blessing. But if you show love to someone who hates you, that love is almost from their end interpreted as like it's a kill them with kindness.
And
it's like
Paul writes about that, like heap the burning coals in their head by being kind.
It's nothing more painful than being a jerk to someone and them loving you back. You receive it almost in this bitterness. It's like, don't be better than me. You know what I mean? Don't try and like elevate yourself. And there's this like tension. So I do think that if we believe that there is a reality out there that is to some extent metaphysical or is transcendent outside of the material world strictly, then there is something to which we are purposed to endeavor towards or to unite with. You know what I mean? And the question is,
and from the paradigm of Christianity, I think you say that is Christ, the logos, the divine logos, you know? But I'm only very good at arguing paradigms. I think I need to get outside a little bit, you know, to like
break free.
You know, I very much enjoy my paradigm, but I'm thinking like I can't argue that within, you know, I can't. That's a different thing. That would be an argument with Christianity, but like, yeah, just the idea of what is truth is something that like. And I'm the king of segues. We all explore, and that's what we do on the Dirty Work podcast. We do the dirty work to explore what truth is.
Your tagline.
Thank you very much. You're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, well, that was super interesting. That was an excellent discussion.
It was.
I mean, I have hours and hours of more things I want to ask you, Cassie. I'm sure that we will have more hours to have you on. If you would,
I totally love
if you would come back. That's awesome.
It's super fun.
But thank you for sharing. This is a really fun, like scholarly story time in the episode of Psychedelics, as well as branching out into really, I mean, what the whole purpose of our Psychedelics episode was to explore its role, if it has any, in religion and spiritual experiences. So I really enjoyed it. And Cassie's work is a hard slap, is listed below in the description. Please check her out. She is awesome. We are more than happy that you joined us. Please join us again at some point.
Yeah.
And Dirty Work compatriots, you know what you need to do. Look at me. I'm looking in your eyes. You need to subscribe on YouTube. Share it with your friends, your family, your aunt that you don't like very much. You need to follow us and engage on all social media platforms. And finally, and most importantly, what do they need to do?
Give us a little bit of money.
Yes.
Give us the moolah.
Okay? We're not in it solely for the money, but we are in it for the money. If this thing doesn't start making money, we're not going to do it anymore. We're busy people. Okay?
And that is a threat.
Not a threat, it's a promise.
We know all of your information.
Yep. No, but seriously,
We already have your credit card number.
thank you so much for listening. This has been a super fun episode. We are coming at you next week. I'm not going to tell them what we're doing next week. It's going to be a surprise.
Keeping it a mystery.
Yeah, keeping it and we loop it all back in, and that's my favorite part about this. In the meantime,
It's like it was scripted.
I know.
It's like
I swear that you read your script I wrote for you very well.
It's like we planned.
Thank you so much, Cassie, for coming today. We will see you next week.
Continue to embrace the struggle. Dirty work. See you next week.